to the 2-month review, the podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take a giant book, break it down week by week, section by section, talk about it, learn from it, try and remember what it's about, put pieces together, have some fun. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Well, howdy, Chad. That was a very NPR start. Kind of boring, a little slow, a little groggy. I was hoping season 19, we got to come out with a bang. Should be like
season 19 is
welcome. Hey. So what we need to do is have you have one name, and then the other person has some, made up weird nickname.
Yeah.
Do you want to have the nickname?
No, it can be Chad and the B-Dog.
Oh God. Yeah, perfect.
Woo! Wee!
Welcome to KKPY the Blowtorch with Chad and the B-Dog. Breaking down books, breaking one spine at a time. Tantalizing your mind today. All right. Well, this is brought to you by Coconut Water and Niacin Drip. We want to thank our sponsors. Yeah.
Oh my God. We need sponsors.
Yeah.
We need fake sponsors.
I just snorted some pre-workout, and we need to snort some pre-workout and drink some bone broth and get after it and grind and seize the day.
Hell yeah. I mean, we totally are the model market for camping technology.
So what the hell are we doing in season 19? The world has changed a whole lot since we started book 1, right?
Holy shit. So for anyone who's not familiar with the long 19-year history, which would have been a really funny 19-season history of this podcast, it started a long time ago, 2011? No.
17.
2017, when we brought out The Invented Part by Rodrigo Fresán, the first of a 3-volume trilogy that we were already planning on publishing. And we decided to try this out as a way of getting into a book that would be daunting on the shelves, that would intimidate people, that has lots of references, that isn't necessarily a linear, straightforward book. So we did that in season 1. And then season 2 was the one that we did with Lytton Smith about Gudberger Bergson's Thomas Janssen bestseller. And from there, this really started to take off. And we started doing more and more books. And season 11 was the dream part, the second volume of Fresán's trilogy. And then last summer, last fall, and that's a story we can get into, the remembered part, the third volume of the trilogy, which is by far the longest. Dream part looks like a baby's book comparatively. This came out, but we never did the 2-month review on it because we were doing Diamela Altit, and then we did something else, didn't we? I forget. Quinn. We did Anne Quinn, so we didn't do too many Spanish books in a row. And they were always going to come back to this. But I don't know about you, but this year has been a lot, a lot of stuff. It still is a lot of stuff, some of which I can joke about during this podcast, some of which I probably can't. But we're back in season 19 to do the final volume of the trilogy. So the remembered part's available. All 3 books are available for sale through our website. And in fact, if you buy them as a set, it's only $40 for all 3, which is a pretty significant discount. All the ebook versions are available. It's available at better bookstores everywhere. And I'll say this now, in theory, we are working on a way so that next summer in 2024, when his next book, Melville, comes out, we'll be able to sell a box set of the 3 with a actual slipcase. In a limited edition for the big super fans. One of which I last night, which I'll plug this right here. So we're going to have more guests this season, I think, or at least occasionally. The last 2 seasons for Fresán, we had a guest almost every episode, and they almost always recurred. The same people were in season 1 were in season 11 for the dream part, and some of them I think should be back. One of whom is Patrick Smith, who I talked to last night. And he has not read the remembered part because first what he started to do last night is reread the invented part and the dream part just to be prepared for this season, the 2-month review, which I was like, you're out of your mind. That's a lot of pages. And he said he's already reread the invented part 3 times. So he might be the most knowledgeable Fresán in English fan there is.
Yeah, more than me.
I mean, I've only read them twice. I've read every one of them twice. This will be the second time for the remembered part, but I've only read it the one time when we were first editing it. So in preparation too, for any super TMR fan nerd out there, the past 22 work days, we've been running the past episodes, rerunning the past episodes of season 1 and season 11 for Invented Part and Dream Part. So if anyone wanted to catch up without having to reread 1,000 pages of literature, there is this other option, which is essentially like 22 hours of us talking.
That's frightening. That is absolutely terrifying. Go listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. You'll get a lot more out of that. I mean, we'll learn about bone broth and hypertrophy. Yeah.
So that's an option. If you wanted to catch up in that way, you're more than welcome. They're all there now. They're all available. And recently reposted and should be behind this in the feed. But so this time we're going to go into the remembered part. And I thought it would be good to have one episode as a buffer before we get into the book itself, just to try and recap where we are. And I don't even
how about before we do a recap, just in case there might be people that just stumble in. You seem like you really like Rodrigo Fresán as a writer. Tell me, just like elevator pitch, what kind of writer is he? Why should I read or care about Rodrigo Fresán?
Fresán is like one of the most learned and interesting writers. Like he is, his writing is just loaded with other references to other works. Like we were talking about this beforehand, but there's usually like a book that's kind of like a focal point of the books for this trilogy. So number one, and the first one was Tender as the Night by Fitzgerald. And Dream Part, it was Wuthering Heights by Bronte. And in this one, it's Dracula. But around that, he has all these like references to the 2001, to music, to other forms of art. Is very entertaining. And then on a sentence level, he's like punchy, witty, humorous, enjoyable. But the thing that I really love more than even the individual lines and the individual bits is the overall structure that he puts together. So one thing that I remember from our conversation with him related to the Invented Part was that the Invented Part was written, I think there's 7 sections, were written in parallel. That he had 7 different documents open and was writing across that way. And so
it was like concentric circles or parentheses that kind of come in.
A
single period, basically, right?
Right. And then at the end of the Dreamed Part, when I was going back through this, he has this line which really like it's about writer, because they're all about a writer, but this one really kind of configures what we're going to be talking about. So it talks about inventing and dreaming and remembering, like the 3 phases of memory. 3 books configuring a trilogy, not linear and advancing, but horizontal and happening simultaneously, all times at the same time, like the time of that cosmic voyager untethered from time. So that which therefore reference to like Slaughterhouse-5, that's embedded within this self-meta reference to like what this trilogy is in relationship to memory and creation. And so I think that he really is, for me, like very stimulating to read and very interesting to put the pieces together. And then on like truly on the line-to-line level, it's just endlessly enjoyable. There's never a dull moment. There's a lot of good rants. There's a lot of interesting pieces that you have to kind of puzzle out. And
how long is this elevator?
Oh, I was on a 32 floor elevator the other day.
What floor are we on?
On a 32 floor elevator the other day, and I leaned back with my back.
Okay, that's fine. We hit every floor.
That's the elevator. That's the only elevator I've ever been in.
Yeah.
We don't have elevators in Rochester.
Yeah. So like a couple hundred characters or less description, would you say he's a maximalist?
Maximalist, sure.
Okay.
Sure. In minimalist terms, he's a maximalist.
Yeah. Lovely. I think for me, what I really I don't like throwing the term around, but he feels like a writer's writer.
Yeah.
Obviously anybody can enjoy him, but if you've ever tried to write or you enjoy writing, for me, there's like such, like you said, he's learned, but for me, there's like this exuberance to pop culture, to literature. There's this exuberance that just makes me so happy to be a human being that can create and want to share. And when you read his work, it just like lights something inside you where you feel that joy.
Yeah.
And so like, it's maximalist, but it's done in this exuberance and this joy that makes you so excited and refreshed. And I don't know, it almost like makes like, it's similar like to Vonnegut, where he's like a humanist, but it's like makes you happy to be human, even though like being human sucks. But but like it makes you really, really excited and happy. That's one thing I really enjoy about his work. I feel so charged and excited to create something and to get into my own work after reading his stuff. Which I think is probably like the highest praise you could give another writer, is just like, you make me, it's like as good as it gets when Jack, you make me want to be a better man. Like you read that and it's like, you make me want to be a better writer. You make me want to be a better reader. You know what I mean? Like I want to read more. I want to write more. I want to create more. And I want to do it with urgency after reading Fresán. That was like 8 floors on the elevators, unfortunately.
Yeah, there we go. There's that shitty Canadian rock band that everyone makes fun of.
Winger.
Yeah, that one. No, the other one, but like Winger too.
She's only 17.
She's only 17. Ain't no big deal. No, that you remind me of what I really am, I think is a line from one of their shitty songs. It reminds me of what you just said.
Is that like Hoobastink? Are they from they're not from Canada, are they?
Hoobastink?
Oh no, you're talking about Nickelback.
Nickelback. That's what I'm trying to. I had ever since I had COVID, every name of things doesn't come to me very fast. Nickelback is exactly what I'm talking about.
So the meme or whatever, that famous clip where like they got rocks thrown at their head, and it's like, you guys want to rock and roll? And they're like, no. Anybody want a rock? And then somebody throws a rock and it hits him in the head. He's like, fuck it. And they walk off the stage. Apparently their manager booked them at like a heavy metal show. And so like it wasn't their, like, like they suck and they're cringy and whatever, but like earnestly, it wasn't their fault. Like they're there for Slayer or Pantera, right? Like, instead they get Nickelback. They're like, who had rocks? Like, I've never been to a show.
Why are you bringing rocks to a show?
I don't know.
Why are you bringing rocks to a knife fight?
Yeah, it was just outside of Beirut, so it was bad.
I mean, there's a lot of rocks.
No, it was in Australia, so I'm sure there's plenty of rocks around to throw.
Probably just a spider, just like a distilled spider or a desiccated spider. In there. So,
for me, there's like a sense of like exuberance and joy that is just, it's so infectious. Love it.
Immense amounts of confidence. Which is something that like a lot of books lack. I feel where there's like a tentativeness or timidness, especially when it comes to writing dialogue. And his dialogues are wonky because there aren't that many, but they're very fun and very entertaining. And like the way that he presents the speeches really works and feels much more natural and confident than people trying to like render how we speak nowadays, which is mostly in emoji and bad slang.
And it's interesting too, because he does it as well without ever, there's never like the hint. There's never like any, like tiny little speck of preciousness. Like it's always, it just feels like genuine, pure, and which is again, like another amazing magic trick where it's like, it's never, hey, look at me, look how clever I'm. Like, when people try to be smart and you're just kind of like, all right, I get what you're doing. You're comparing these two things, and I normally wouldn't make this comparison. Look how unique and uncliche this is. Like, it never feels like that.
Yeah.
It's not trying. It's not trying. It's not precious, which I really appreciate as well.
Absolutely. And we have so many more books of his coming, which is great. And hopefully we'll be able to like really keep this train rolling. So what do you remember? I remember I just remembered as
the karmas.
The karmas.
I love the karmas.
Green cow karmas.
They're kind of like what are the karmas? Kind of like a Kardashian family sort of thing in Mexico.
Yeah, they make something, but nobody knows. Nobody ever really is sure what it is that they produce. They're a giant family. They have a matriarch. What's her name? Like Mama Grandma? Mama Grandma?
Yeah.
Something like that. And the writer's sister gets married to one of the mantras, who then goes into a coma immediately at their wedding reception. And then she lives with the Karmas in Mexico for a long time. And their family is like obsessed with texting and with like Kardashian-like activities and like nothing outside of that, and is like willfully unaware of their like hypocrisy and weirdness.
So like the gist of like book one was the writer making his way to the particle collider. Right.
So he could enter the particle collider, merge with the God particle,
like
and
the
become
singularity
like a Morty character that can like rewrite and redo things however he wanted. And along the way, there's someone who's trying to make a biography of him to a young student who wants to be a writer as well, a young writer. And they are they're camping where his sister lived when she burns down the house, and her son goes missing.
Okay.
Remember the son?
Sort of. I remember too, there's like a great work that's basically being copied or stolen.
Yeah, by the guy in the plane.
Yeah. So
there's
kind of
there's a very circular, Invented Part's very circular, right? It opens with the writer on the to-be writer, that's the focal point of all three books, is on the beach with his parents, who are reading the two versions of Tender as the Night, the one that's chronological and the one that's not. And then he starts to drown and sees a plane above. And the last scene is like the writer later on in a plane over the sea, seeing himself drowning in that moment.
Very French cinema there.
Yeah. I mean, you have to hold a lot in your mind to remember where all the pieces are to this.
And then the remembered part is that primarily hospital bed?
The dream.
Oh, sorry, the dream part.
I think I screwed that up somewhere in one of our posts recently. So if anyone caught that, I apologize. But yeah, the dream part is number 2. So Invented Part's a lot about creation and where do ideas come from? Where does like art come from? The writer that wants to be a writer, and like, and then his and he's sort of like not washed up, but like past that moment of like peak attention. And his number one nemesis is IKEA, whose book he had blurbed, who is like kowtows to the masses and does like more commercial and conventional sort of writing. This is successful writer, pisses off the writer. I'm trying to think of what other things. I just remembered though, I wrote a long not exegesis, but like a long thing as we did that season. Every week there was like a long post about the section we read, and it's all pieced together into a PDF. I'll put that up in the show notes for this. I haven't looked at it since whenever that was, 2017. So it's probably stupid, but nevertheless, like it might be a helpful reminder of some things, some of the details. But yeah, then the dream part, the writer has insomnia, and it begins with that dream or the situation where there's like a institute that people can't dream anymore, and they need a dreamer, or they train people. This is what it was, wasn't it? Where they train people that in their dreams they do work, because that way dreaming and sleeping is efficient time for capitalism instead of like wasteful. And then the one person who can dream, that's going to like, change everything, render everything different. And the writer is an insomniac that has built this insane bed that is mostly spent in that bed. And the descriptions of it are like epic and like it can do anything and be anything. And I think it moves through the house. It's like, I remember it being like really in my mind, it's like a steampunk sort of like situation. And then the other thing that we fucked up in the first time we talked about it, but I think Will Vanderheiden clarified, was that his sister is in a psych hospital. She's obsessed with Wuthering Heights, and she burns down. It's like the Sisters of Saint whatever, and she burns down that place and dies within it, I believe. And her son is still gone, presumed dead, and is gone off the table. So it's just the writer in that one, for the most part. I think I have that one in front of me. I don't know where the Invented Part is, because someone decided to rearrange the entire house while I was in London, so everything's in new places, and there are like boxes of books that are like now to go to the basement, that in which I found this, but I couldn't find the Invented Part, which is probably in that box too. I don't know where anything is. But to be fair, like this is fine, especially because it is removing junk. Whereas I also spent, after going to London and before being in New York last week, spent 2 days at my parents' hoarder's house trying to help remove endless amounts of empty boxes within empty boxes with trash inside them, with bags inside those, inside other empty boxes, and literally suitcases from the 1960s that have
you just described my mind.
It's I was like
what is in here? Empty box with an empty box with an empty box, and there's just trash in the middle of it. Why am I keeping this around?
It's like a motherfucking Matryoshka doll of boxes
of just sorrow.
Sorrow.
We were listening to 90s music last night, and it was just on random, and like I knew every single artist, and it was really embarrassing. It was like the band Stabbing Westward came on. I was like, oh yeah, Stabbing Westward. It's like 1990, probably 95, 96, I think. And they're like, how the fuck do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. When's your child's birthday? I have no clue.
Yeah.
But I remember Stabbing Westward. I smoked an apple bong to that actually when that song came out. That one hit wonder. Yeah. It's like that is trash inside an empty box right there. That's all I have.
I had to keep myself on a little level to get through my parents' like nightmare of a house. I can't even begin to describe. If anyone has ever emptied out or tried to empty out a hoarder's house, you will relate. Until you have tried to do it, you can't describe the epic depths of nonsense that exists within that. Like, it's crazy.
So do you have any predictions whatsoever? Oh, you've already read. Never mind.
I read this, but let me make something clear. So I read this. Now let's talk about the publishing history of this a bit, because it kind of got fucked. Through a combination of lots of weird forces. I read it when it was first turned in and went through and made changes and did the corrections. And then Will did his edits. And then we had an outside reader do the proofing for it. And then at that time, the book was supposed to come out initially in April, but it wasn't going to be able to come out in April because of the proofing and the length of it. Like, it just wasn't, that timing wasn't going to work. There was no way to have it ready. So it's going to be delayed till June. And then last year, for anyone that doesn't read all the dumb shit that I write or talk to anyone within the publishing industry, there was a massive problem with printing. There's a supply chain issue that became like crippling. Like, it started in the fall of 2021 when we won the National Book Award for Translation with Winter and Sakcho. It couldn't be printed at the printer for like, I think it was almost 10 weeks. Usually the lead time is like 3 to 5 weeks for you to get something printed. And that book was small. And they're like, well, there's issues. There's not enough, everything needs to be printed. There's like various big books that sort of screwed things up. There's a lot of like demand for printing and a paper shortage. And so nothing could be sourced, and all the prices started going up and nothing was available. And for Winter and Sakcho had this weird situation where the printing press got struck by lightning. So of course, like a piece of it didn't work. All fucking chaos. So just chaos. And then in the spring, by the time we were like trying to get this printed, that problem had been exacerbated to like the worst degree I've ever seen it. And books that were above like a certain number of pages, like 400, were just being rejected. They're like, we can't do this until we can't slot this in for like 6 months because we can't get enough paper to do that. Like of one type of paper that you need one kind of set to make it all the books like uniform, both in terms of like their page, the way the pages are, but also with the spine width, because anytime you change it, like this changes the spine width. So like we can't access that much paper. So the book just kept having to get delayed because the only place that we could print it was through like a short digital print runs, which we could do, but those are like twice to 3 times the amount that it costs to print at a larger printer. So we were doing like 1,000 copies short and then like 3,000 copies from the other printer, but the 3,000 copies wouldn't come for like 6 months. So like everything was like jagged and like not lined up right, which is unfortunate and like made it tricky for promotional purposes, for everything. The book got a couple really nice reviews and was on like Powell's like year-end best list and on a couple of other places like that. So there were people that really responded and really like it and like him. But I feel like this is a time for a second life for this book now that those problems are over for the most part. It's still hard to get paper, but it's easier and places can do things quicker. But one example of this, there is a Delkey book called Antagony that I finished editing in like say September of 2021. And the book was sent to the printer and it took 9 months for the printer to deliver it because it was 1,100 pages. It was too big. It could only be printed at one printer because of the spine width. It was all problematic. And so it was sent in like March or April and didn't come in until like the end of the year. And then, of course, like it was named as one of the best books of the year by the New Yorker. So it sold out. So we have to try and reprint this thing, which just makes me just hate life. To be honest, like, it's like the one time that like success is like, fuck success. I don't want to have to reprint this book.
Have some lightning.
Yeah, here's some lightning. It's like a Pokemon.
I've got a weird sense of humor where so my wife and I, we have this we order coffee from this place in California, and there was something wrong, or they weren't able to ship it. So I called. It was like, "Hey, where's our coffee?" And like, "Yeah, we had a problem with all the rain and stuff. Our roasting plant collapsed and killed one of the workers." And I was like, like obviously my initial reaction was like, "Oh my God!" It's like, but like the comedy part of me wanted to be like, "So where's the coffee?"
Yeah.
like it's like getting struck by lightning. Like, "Oh, sorry, your thing got struck by lightning. So can I have my book, please?" Like,
yeah, please. Can you hurry that up? Like, ooh, lightning. Good for you. You have insurance.
Yeah. Oh, a building collapsed and killed somebody. I kind of need my pound of coffee, like.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't change my morning.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So the remembered part, hopefully. So I have read it. Do I have questions about it? I do not.
I'm just curious if so we go from invention to dreaming and then remembering. So it makes me wonder if I'm planning on reading Dracula as I'm reading this as well. I'm wondering if there's going to be like an epistolatory aspect to it.
I think it's more Proust.
What's that? Okay. Aha.
Yeah.
More words in Proust, Tom.
Yeah. I forget how many pages this thing is as a whole.
How many people have actually read? I mean, most people read the first book, right? But how many people have read? Like, I guess it's very similar with the trilogy. Like, how many people are going to read all three?
Yeah, I know. It's really like it's a real
because I have not read all of Proust.
Yeah, I have not either. Yeah. I read the first like 2 volumes and like 25 years ago and was like, yeah, I'm totally down. I'm going to do this. And then they're announcing like the new translations. And I was like, oh, I'll wait for that. And then you couldn't get them in the US. And I was like,
weren't you and I going to do a thing where we're going to challenge each other in the new year to read the whole thing?
Yeah, that was last year. And we didn't.
Yeah, what happened to that? I guess that's like with my gym membership that I don't use. It's
somewhere, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Well, one of the people that works at Delkey Walker, he's been reading Proust. So we should have him on here just has to grill him about that. And he said that he's really into it. There was one night where Proust came up recently. It's a translation situation where there is a quote unquote new translation available here in the US that has a opening line that doesn't have, it sounds kind of like the Wild West a little bit. And I'll find it and share it with you. And because it is interesting, but the translation is 40 years old. It was translated by an Australian person, Australian guy. And I think he's done the whole, whatever you want to call it, In Search of Lost Time or Remembrance of Things Past. And there was like a controversy on Twitter because this famous New Yorker critic, Merv Emre, she was like, I love this new translation and this opening line. And people were like, that opening line is sacrilege. It is horrible. It is, sounds wrong and it's terrible. And it's like, this sounds fascinating. And I want to use I usually use multiple translations of a book in my class for like a chapter for them to compare. I think I'm going to try it with Proust next year because I have 2 of them and I've seen this third one and they're pretty different. Like they really have a different vibe to them in terms of like what is being accomplished. Anyways, all Proust step aside. So I think Proust is part of the remembered part is like a bit to it. I believe that a lot of information that you might need is recapped early on. Okay. If I remember right, that there is like enough to give you your foothold. And I think some of the characters as we go, we'll remember, pull out memory of them. Like Uncle Walrus is that.
It's gonna be like Game of Thrones, where I'm just like, oh yeah, who is that again? Why are they why are there boobs and dragons and beheadings going? Whatever. I'm in for the ride. Let's go.
Let's do it. So one of the things that'll be weird for the whole season is that for most of it will be overseas, including the next next week. I think we can do this before I leave, but the week afterwards I'll be in Iceland. So you say and leading a alumni trip and giving like literary lectures, which I have to finish writing, and various other cultural tidbits. And as a part of that, I've been reading Jarl's saga, the Icelandic saga. So you say Game of Thrones, like, this is kind of where the origin sort of is from. The Jarl's saga and the Egil saga are fucking incredible. You need to, if you haven't read these before, you would love them. They are honed. There's no like wasted words. There's no internal anything. It's just like a story, and it's very complex frequently, but generally also like wildly funny. Like if you have an inappropriate sense of humor, I think that the sagas are super, super, super funny. They're based on like a bit of that, like, go and you murder whomever, like just you have to murder them, such is life. And especially if they take any of your sheep, but then like at various points in time, they like bust out into poetry as if it's a musical. It's like what a sing. And then there's one part where Egil sings to a king because the king's gonna behead him, and the king's like, yeah, that's a pretty good poem. You can live, but half of your kinsmen are dead. He's like, okay, good enough. That's just how it goes. But they're really, really entertaining and funny, and a little bit bawdy at times, and super strange. And I have my new I could go on about these for hours and hours. You need to read it because I think you would love the tone and the like precision. Like there's one bit where Egil at the end of his life, he's just a berserker. He just goes around causing mischief and murder, whatever, settled in Iceland in the 900s, fucking people up. And at the end of his life, he wants to go to like their annual like gathering of all the like leaders and chieftains and whatnot, their parliament, and just pour all the silver down coins off the cliff into the meeting, so they'll fight with each other and murder each other, and he can just sit on the cliff and laugh at them. That's the end of the book. And his daughter's like, nah, that's not a good idea. And so they don't do that. That's the end of the saga. It's him trying to cause massive mayhem.
Jeez.
It's fucking wonderful. Everything about the sagas is wonderful. That is a separate pitch, but I will be there trying to do this. So it's going to be a little bit fun, a little bit strange. I'll be able to give you guys some good Icelandic, anecdotes along the way. So that I was going to tell you. That doesn't matter. So yeah. So remembered part. What do you expect?
I don't have a lot of expectations. Just a lot of references that I'm not going to get, and then just do my best to buckle up and hang on.
Ride that dragon.
Ride that monster.
It is.
So we're doing 1 to 82, correct?
Yes, I was just pulling that out.
Yeah, pages 1 to 82, I believe.
Yep, 1 to 82 for next week, and that will be a good chunk. That'll get us going for sure. All right. And it's gonna be fun. I think it'll be great. Actually, I think this is gonna be a really entertaining summer of Fresán. And for anyone following along, like, just dive in. Don't worry if you haven't read the first two. Catch up through the podcast. We do a pretty good job of like giving you what you need, even if it's not always accurate. You'll get the gist, and then just start reading it. It's an entertaining book. I think that you can do that. We'll fill in the gaps. The structure is different than the other two to some degree, and let's just do it.
Sounds good. See you next week.
Yeah, subscribe, buy books. Talk to you all soon.